What does it really mean to live a good life? I mean, it's a question we all wrestle with, right? Well, today we're diving into a 2,300-year-old guide from one of the greatest minds in history, Aristotle. I want you to really think about this for a second. Why did you get up this morning? Probably to go to work. Okay, but why? To earn money. Why? To feel secure, to buy things. If you just keep asking why, where does that chain of questions finally stop? This is the exact puzzle the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle was determined to solve. So Aristotle started with this really simple but kind of profound observation. He said that every single thing we do, every skill we learn, every project we start, every action we take, it all seems to be aiming at some kind of good. Medicine aims for health, building a house aims for shelter, and so on. And this is where his logic is just so powerful. If you do A to get B, and then B to get C and C to get D, that chain can't just go on forever. If it did, the whole thing would be pointless. He argued there has to be a final stop, an ultimate goal that we want just for what it is, not for something else. He called this the highest good, which, let's be honest, most of us would just call happiness. But what is this happiness, really? Aristotle knew that while everyone agrees on the word, we all have wildly different ideas about what it actually means. So he put on his detective hat and decided to first investigate and rule out the usual suspects, the most common but wrong answers. Okay, suspect number one, a life of pleasure. Chasing delicious food, constant entertainment, immediate gratification. It's a super popular answer, even today. But for Aristotle, was this the real deal? Aristotle's answer? A hard no. And his takedown is swift and pretty brutal, actually. He argues that a life spent just chasing pleasure isn't a uniquely human life. It's a life, in his words, fit for grazing animals. Ouch. He believed our ultimate purpose had to be tied to what makes us human. So, pleasure? That's out. All right, pleasure's off the table. What about the next big one? Money. A life dedicated to getting rich and accumulating stuff. This one's a huge deal in our world for sure. And again, Aristotle says, nope, that's not it either. His reasoning here is just crystal clear. Nobody wants piles of cash just to look at it. We want money for what it can do for us. Buy us security, comfort, experiences. Wealth is always a tool, a means to an end, so it can't possibly be the final goal we're looking for. Okay, what about something a little more sophisticated, like a life of public honor or fame? Well, here's the catch. Honor isn't really yours. It's something other people give you, and they can snatch it away just as quickly. Aristotle was convinced the true good had to be something internal, something stable, something that truly belonged to you and couldn't be easily taken away. So, if it's not pleasure, it's not wealth, and it's not honor, what's left? Well, this is where Aristotle unveils his own groundbreaking answer. He gives it a special Greek name that is the absolute core of his philosophy: eudaimonia. Now, this is so important to get right. Eudaimonia isn't the fleeting buzz you get from eating a donut. It's not a mood. The best way to think about it is human flourishing. It's an active, ongoing state of being your best possible self, of realizing your full potential. It's about living well and doing well. And here it is, Aristotle's own definition, boiled down. Let's pull this apart, because there are two powerhouse words in here. First, activity. See, happiness isn't a thing you have, it's something you do. It's an active practice. And second, virtue. This activity has to be done in a certain way, with excellence. So, happiness is virtuous activity. That's an amazing definition, but it immediately begs the next question. How on earth do we become virtuous? Well, thankfully, Aristotle doesn't leave us hanging. He gives us this beautifully practical toolkit for it, something he called the doctrine of the mean. The core idea here is that for any part of life, the virtuous way to act is a golden mean right in the middle of two extremes, which he calls vices. Just like a personal trainer knows that doing way too little exercise is bad, but doing way too much is also bad, Aristotle says the exact same thing applies to our character. That sweet spot in the middle is where excellence lives. Let's make this real with some examples. When you're facing something scary, having too little courage is cowardice, but having too much is recklessness or rashness. The virtue, that golden mean, is courage. Same with money. Too little generosity is stinginess. Too much is just being wasteful. The virtue is generosity. For Aristotle, it's all about finding that perfect balance. Now, Aristotle adds a really important clarification here. He's not saying everything has some nice middle ground. Some actions, he lists things like envy, theft, murder, are just plain wrong, full stop. There's no such thing as a virtuous amount of murder. The doctrine of the mean only applies where there's a spectrum of too little, just right, and too much. So here's the crucial part. It's not enough to just know what generosity is. Knowing the definition doesn't make you a generous person. You have to actually become one. But how do you do that? And this might be his most powerful and, I think, most optimistic idea. Nobody is just born a hero or born a coward. Aristotle believed that moral goodness isn't a gift or something you're born with. It's a skill. And just like any other skill, you get it through practice and building habits. He literally lays out the entire blueprint for us. Step 1, you learn what the right thing to do is. You get the knowledge. Step 2, you go out and you practice doing it again and again. Step 3, those actions over time start to become automatic habits. And finally, step 4, those habits shape who you are. They become your character. As he famously put it, we become just by doing just acts. You literally build yourself through what you do. And this brings us right back around to the beginning. This is the ultimate takeaway from Aristotle's entire guide to the good life. Eudaimonia, that true happiness, that human flourishing, it's not a prize you win at the end of the race. It's the sum of your actions. It's the ongoing, active process of living with virtue day after day. So let's end by turning this 2,300-year-old guide back on ourselves. In what area of your own life, maybe your confidence, your spending, your patience, do you tend to lean towards one of the extremes? And what's just one small, repeatable action you could start taking, maybe even today, to practice finding that virtuous middle ground? It's a question worth chewing on. Thanks for joining.